Hello, my name's Mrs. Chiverton. I'm one of the Directors for Science. Welcome to your next science lesson. Before we start, can I remind you to switch off any notifications to the devices you're watching this video on so you can concentrate fully. And you are going to need either some paper and a pen or your exercise book or a Google document to complete these activities. So today's Year 8 lesson is about hormones and auxins section, and it's a section on contraception. So just as a starter to get us thinking, looking back at what we knew from Key Stage 2, these are some key terms to do with sexual reproduction and the meanings of them. So I'm just going to give you 2 minutes to write down each of the key terms and next to it say what it actually means. So we're matching up the name of the female sex cell in humans with what its actual name is. 2 minutes, off you go. Okay, let's just check those answers. So the female sex cell in humans is called an egg, and the male sex cell in humans is called the sperm cell. The process when a male and a female sex cell fuse together is fertilization, and the process used for humans to reproduce is called sexual reproduction. And finally, the process of a female sex cell being released is ovulation. So today we're going to hopefully be able to identify different types of contraception, and we're going to compare the efficacy of the contraceptive methods. That means how well they actually work. So just a little bit of background information and to remind you. So fertilization is that process where the sperm cells, which are the highly specialized sex cells of the male, deliver the male DNA to the egg cells of the female. And if that happens, pregnancy can occur when that sperm cell reaches and fuses with an ovulated egg cell that's been released from an ovary. We talked about that when we talked about the menstrual cycle. So contraceptives are methods by which you can prevent having an unwanted pregnancy. This is time for us to develop our knowledge about contraception. So what I've listed for you here are several different methods of contraception. By the end of this lesson, you should have recorded whether they are a hormonal method, a barrier method, or an other type of method of contraception. You should have a brief summary about how it works and an advantage and a disadvantage, at least, of each one of these. Now, in order to record this, you need this table. If you're doing this in an exercise book, I would suggest you take 2 pages to record this table. You might want to do it on paper or in a Google document, but make sure you're giving yourself plenty of space to actually write this information in. So I'm going to try and give you, on the timer, just a minute to actually record that table ready to add information to it. Off you go. Okay, if you need a little bit more time to complete that table, please make sure that you pause the video here and you can do it. But what we're going to move on to next is I'm going to give you information about each of those methods of contraception. And as we go through each slide, I want you to record that information on your table. So remember, you're looking out for whether it's a hormonal method of contraception, a barrier method, or another type of contraception. How does it actually work? Just a brief sentence. And some advantages or some disadvantages of using them. So first of all, we're going to talk about non-hormonal methods of contraception. All right, so these are usually barrier methods. So one of the things, if a couple wants to prevent having a pregnancy, is to use a barrier that ensures that the egg and sperm never meet. And there's some pictures of them there on the Google slide. So 3 types that we need to be aware of here. So condoms. These are worn over the penis during sex to prevent the sperm from actually entering the vagina. If the sperm can't get into the vagina, they can't get up to meet an egg that has been released from an ovary. Condoms have a variety of pros and cons. They're very easily available. You can buy them in shops, you can get them in machines in pubs and in toilets, places. So they're very, very easily available. You can also get them from family planning clinics and from your doctor. They are simple to use. They're only used during sex, so there's no side effects to using condoms. But unfortunately, they are not 100% reliable. They can split or burst, or they could leak when they're being removed at the end of it. So they're not the most reliable form of contraception. Spermicides are another type of contraception. So these come as a gel or a cream. They're often used with condoms or diaphragms, and they produce a substance which actually kills the sperm or stops them swimming. So they're not a physical barrier and they're not hormones. These would be classed as an other type of contraception. They can work quite well with other methods, but they wouldn't be effective on their own. Okay, because the sperm could still potentially get through to the egg. Okay, but again, they're quite readily available, so that is an advantage of them, and they're quite easy to use and they're not very expensive. Now, another barrier method, this one would be used by the female, by the lady, and it's called a diaphragm, and it's a shallow, flexible plastic cup, and it fits over the entrance to the uterus, the cervix. It's usually used along with a spermicide. And again, this acts as a barrier. It stops the sperm that are released in the vagina from getting out of the vagina and up through the cervix and into the uterus. So it stops the eggs from meeting the sperm. So just running through those again, as I've said, the condoms are good because they're cheap and they're quite easily available. But there are issues. For example, condoms can split and the sperm could travel further up into the female reproductive organs. A diaphragm, the advantage of it is that it is reasonably effective. However, if it isn't fitted properly, then the sperm could travel into the female's reproductive organs. And also, it needs to be fitted by a health professional first. So you can't just buy these in the shops. You would have to go to a doctor or a family planning clinic in order to be fitted for a diaphragm. Now, another method that we could use is an interuterine device. Now, how this works is by stopping the embryo or fertilized egg from actually implanting into the lining of the uterus where it could develop, or by releasing a hormone that stops that happening. So the device contains copper, which makes the female's body unsuitable for pregnancy. Again, they have to be fitted by a health professional, so you'd have to go to a family planning clinic or a doctor. And they're not removed in between sex. So this would stay permanently in the lady's body until she had it removed by a doctor or a health professional. So, and one of the advantages is you don't have to think about it once it's been fitted. So the diaphragm and the condoms and the spermicides you have to use every single time you're having sex. But with the IUD, it's there and you can forget about it and not worry about it. However, one of the disadvantages is that some women are actually allergic to the copper and it can cause nasty side effects, so it wouldn't be suitable for them. Another one is that you have to go and have it fitted by a health professional, and you can't just change your mind easily. You would have to go and have it removed by a health professional if you change your mind and decided you want to become pregnant at a later stage. And then another method of contraception that doesn't involve hormones is abstinence, or not having sex. All right, so it's possible to work out when an egg is likely to be in the female's oviduct or released from their ovaries. If you think about the menstrual cycle, it was roughly day 14 when ovulation happens. So if a couple don't have sexual intercourse during the time when the egg is likely to be released from the ovaries, then it reduces her chance of becoming pregnant because it's unlikely that the egg will be fertilized by the sperm cell. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to this. There's no hormones involved, so there's no side effects. The couple don't have to worry about devices, which can cause problems, but it's not 100% reliable because sperm cells can actually exist inside a woman's body for several days after they've been released. So it is possible to still get pregnant like that. So this natural rhythm method, as you can see from this slide, it's about working out where the best time to get pregnant is or the best time to avoid being pregnant. But the problems are that not everybody's cycle is irregular, and things like stress and medication or illness can also cause problems with people's cycles, and that can lead to this being a very high failure rate of this method. However, some people whose religious beliefs prohibit other methods of contraception, this would be the way that they would try to control their family size. Now, I know that's a lot of information, so you can go back and revisit any of those slides if you want to, but you should have been filling in information as we've gone along. So let's have a quick look at what we should have got. Okay, so I've put in some very, very brief information here, okay, and you can add to it. So the condom is a barrier method. It fits over the penis and it stops the egg and sperm from meeting. Some of the advantages are that they're cheap and they're easily available. But the disadvantages is they can split and therefore they're not 100% reliable. The barrier method, the diaphragm, is another barrier method. Again, this fits over the cervix, but it does the same job. It stops the egg and sperm from meeting. Advantages is that it's quite effective. A disadvantage could be that it needs putting in every time. It also needs fitting by a health professional. The spermicides, we would class this as an other type of method because it's not really hormonal and it's not really a barrier. It works by killing the sperm or stopping them from swimming. And advantage is it's quite easy to use and it's readily available and it's not very expensive. But the disadvantage is that it could be classed as messy and it's not very effective on its own. It would need to be used with a different method. I then talked about the IUDs. And these can be a combination of barrier or hormonal methods. And what they do is they stop the eggs from implanting in the uterus. The advantage is that it is effective and it stays in place, so you don't have to worry about it between, on your day-to-day basis. But some women are allergic to the copper, could be a disadvantage. You could have also talked about it having to be removed by a health professional if you decided to change your mind and want to start a family. And then finally, that's the abstinence or rhythm method, and we would class this as other, and it works by only having sex when you are not ovulating. It's good if you have religious issues with any of the other methods or health issues with any of the other methods, but the bad thing is it's not particularly reliable. So again, if you need to add any of that information, if you missed any of it, you can just pause the video at this point and you can add that information to it. So the other main method of contraception is based on hormones. And we can use hormones to interfere with the menstrual cycle and to reduce fertility. So you know from a previous lesson that we have these 4 hormones that are all involved together in both building up the lining of the uterus so that it's ready to accept an implanted egg, and releasing the egg from the ovary so that it potentially can be fertilized and develop into a pregnancy. And if we can disrupt the levels of these hormones, we can actually reduce the chances of a pregnancy occurring. So the most popular method has always been oral contraceptives since they were developed in the 1960s. Now, these are a tablet form. They contain a variety of different hormones, and they're taken by mouth by the female. Okay, there isn't a male contraceptive pill available at the minute. So what this does is the hormones either inhibit, which means to reduce or stop, things like follicle stimulating hormone production so that no eggs actually mature. If the eggs haven't matured and haven't been released into the fallopian tubes, then they can't be fertilized by sperm cells, and therefore the female cannot be pregnant. Now, these tend to be, if they're taken correctly, very, very reliable, 98 to 99% reliable. Unfortunately, because they are hormones, they can have side effects. So some women put on weight, some women can have lots of headaches. There are lots of different side effects that can occur taking these tablets, and they must be taken every day to be effective. And the other thing about oral contraception is they have to be prescribed by a doctor or another health professional in order to get them, and you have to go to the chemist to get them. So oral contraceptives are not suitable for everybody because of the side effects, and they do need to be taken every day, and some of them even at the same time every day. But if they are used correctly and they do suit the woman, then they can be a very, very effective, 98 to 99% effective. More recently, there has been things developed like injections. Now, the female would be injected with the hormone progesterone. And what this does is it stops or inhibits the release of the eggs from the ovaries for several months or even years in some cases, usually months. If the eggs aren't released, then the sperm can't possibly fertilize them. And again, there are advantages to it, that it is very reliable. But there are some disadvantages. It must be given by a health professional or prescribed by a health professional. They're usually given every 3 to 6 months, which is an advantage that you're not worrying about it on a day-to-day basis and you can't forget to take them, but you do have to go to the doctors every 3 to 6 months. And another advantage is you don't have to wait that long for the effects to wear off. So if you've had the injection and you change your mind and decide that you and your partner are ready to have a baby, it only takes a few months for the effects to wear off, and then you can start trying to have a baby. Now, the implants, our skin patches, also work on a hormone basis. The implant is a small stick that's inserted under the skin of the female, usually in their upper arm. The patch would look a bit like a plaster and would sit somewhere on the female's skin. And again, both of these methods slowly release the hormone progesterone and will stop the eggs from maturing and therefore being released. And one of the big advantages of these methods is they will last several months or even years. So if you have the implants, they will usually last for 2 to 3 years. They would need removing and replacing at that point, and these can only be delivered by a health professional. And of course, it's not so good if you are likely to change your mind and want a baby, because you wouldn't just be able to stop taking them. You would have to go and have them removed by the health professional. And then we have the method of sterilisation. Now, this is really only suitable for people who have decided they absolutely do not want to have any more children. It is an operation, so that's also known as a surgical procedure. It can be done to both men and women, so males and females can both have their own separate operation. And there are different types, but they all mean that successful fertilization of an egg by a sperm cell can no longer happen. So in the female, they cut the oviducts, so the egg cannot get from the ovary into the uterus, and sperm cannot get from the uterus up into the ovary, so they definitely can't meet. In the man, they cut the sperm ducts, so even though the testes carry on producing sperm, they're never released when the man ejaculates. So there are risks to this. Any surgery has to have an anaesthetic, which can be dangerous. There is a risk of infections because you're having to make a cut on somebody's skin in order to carry out these procedures. And also, neither of them are easy to reverse. It is possible to try and reverse them, but it's not an easy thing to do. So this is really only an option for people who have absolutely decided that they have had enough children. Because the big advantage of this is it's permanent. Once you've had sterilisation, you should not get pregnant or be able to get somebody else pregnant. So fill in the remaining barriers and we can go through those here. So the pill is definitely hormonal. It tends to reduce the amount of FSH, so the eggs don't mature. The advantage is it is a reliable method, 98 to 99% if you take it regularly. But the disadvantages are things like it has side effects and you must take it every day. The hormonal injections, again, this time it's progesterone that's released and it stops the release of eggs. Again, it's reliable and lasts many months, so that's an advantage. But a disadvantage is it's not so easy to change your mind. You have to wait until the effects wear off, and it has to be administered by a health professional. The implants, again, they're hormonal, and the progesterone stops the release of eggs. So it's, again, a reliable method. This one usually lasts several years, but again, a disadvantage, it has to be administered by a health professional and it's not easy to change your mind. And then the final method I mentioned was sterilisation. I've put that as other. Basically, it's an operation and it's to cut either the oviducts or the sperm duct, depending on whether it's done to the male or the female. The advantage is it's permanent, so it's really reliable. The disadvantage is you cannot change your mind because it is not easy to reverse this process. So again, if you need to, pause the video and add any information in that you feel you might have missed as we've been going through those slides. This is an opportunity for you to review and test a little bit of your knowledge. So what I want you to do is to answer the following questions in as much detail as you can. So for 1 mark, what is a contraceptive? For 2 marks, what is the difference between a hormonal and a non-hormonal contraceptive? And for number 3, describe what oral contraceptives are and how they work. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer those questions. Okay, that should be plenty of time. So let's have a look, and you can self-assess and improve your answers if you need to. So in terms of what is a contraceptive? So contraception is a method to prevent pregnancy. And the difference between hormonal and non-hormonal contraceptives: a hormonal contraceptive stops eggs from being released or implanting into the uterus, whereas a barrier stops the sperm and the egg from meeting. And then finally, 1 mark for each bit. So oral contraceptives are the tablets taken by a female. They contain hormones. FSH production is inhibited or reduced, and therefore no eggs mature. So hopefully you managed to get all of those, and you can improve your answers in a different colour if you feel you missed any bits and pieces off there. So, in science, we sometimes have to consider things beyond the normal science, and we use terms that not everybody is really familiar with. If we talk about a social reason for something happening, it relates to society or to an organisation. If we talk about personal, it's belonging to or affecting a particular person rather than anything else. If we talk about something being an economic factor, then we have to consider it in relation to trade, industry, or creation of wealth. So that's all to do with money. And then the environmental factors is the impact of human activities on the natural world. So we know about lots of environmental factors such as, global warming, effect on different animals or different plants in certain areas. Okay. So when we're talking about things and debating things, we can think about those social, personal, economic, or environmental reasons. Now, contraception can be quite a tricky topic. Some people simply don't agree with using it as they think it's going against nature or going against God's teachings. Some people in certain countries and in certain areas of the world, and even in this country, simply cannot afford some of the methods of contraception. Some people can't access them easily because many of them have to be prescribed or fitted by a health professional. Some people find that very difficult to access those health professionals, or they don't want to, they're embarrassed about it. And some methods are not suitable for certain people or at a certain time in their life. So it may be that one method works for somebody when they are younger, but not when they get older. It may be that for health reasons, the side effects might not work for some of the hormonal contraceptives and so on. So, as I've said, the same method may not be appropriate for each person or couple, and they might want to change their method of contraception at different points in their lives. So this is where we're going to have a little bit of an empathise, and we're going to think about what would be the best method for a certain group of people. So these are the contraception scenarios, and what I want you to do is to look at the different scenarios and decide which method you think is best for that person or couple at that time. And I need you to give me a reason why you would recommend this method. Now that could be more than one different method that you could recommend. And there could be lots of different reasons as to why you recommend that one. It might be that you're recommending that method for a positive reason, or it might be that you think other methods are unsuitable and you could use that to say why you've recommended the method that you have. Okay, so 3 scenarios. A couple do not want to have a baby until they are both settled in their jobs and have a nice house to live in. This is probably in about 3 years' time. Second scenario, a couple already have 3 children and definitely do not want to have any more children in the future. And the third scenario, a couple have just had a baby and are likely to want to increase their family next year. I'm going to give you 3 minutes just to attempt that. Picking a method of contraception, look back on your table with all of those methods, and then give me your reason why. Okay, so 3 minutes. 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 3 Okay, hopefully you've come up with some ideas there. So let's look at some possible answers to this. So there can be more than one answer, and it's okay so long as you justify it. Now, justifying means that you give a valid reason why you've made that decision. So for the young couple who don't want a baby for at least 3 years, I've suggested either the IUD, the pill, or the injection, or an implant might have been a good suggestion there. And the reason I've recommended those is because they all give really good levels of protection. So in other words, they are very, very unlikely to have an accidental pregnancy, but they're also easily reversed in the future. The IUD and the implant could be removed. The pill could, the lady could just simply stop taking it, and the injection, if they plan it right, they should be able to change their mind in 3 years' time. For the couple that already have 3 children and definitely don't want any more, I would have suggested sterilisation. It's a permanent method ensuring no more babies, and it does mean that the woman doesn't have to take any hormones, and they don't have to worry about barrier methods. The final one, the couple that have just had a baby but are likely to want to increase their family within a year, I've said pill, condoms and patches are reasonably reliable methods and easy to stop when they want to start having a family. So the injections and the implants would not be as suitable here because they're not quite so easy to reverse the effects of when they decide to want to have a family, if it's in such a short period of time as a year. So hopefully you managed to get some ideas down there. There isn't a lot of right and wrong answers here, and it is down to the individual person. So just looking forward, when you start your GCSE courses, you will revisit this topic and you will look in much more detail about the different methods of contraception and be able to debate why certain people decide on certain methods. So you may have been given a Google quiz to complete by your teacher, in which case please do that and the quiz will be automatically marked. And what you can also do is add this summary of the key learning points to your notes. So contraception is a method of controlling pregnancy. It can be a hormonal method that stops eggs being released, or a barrier method that stops eggs and sperm meeting, or other methods. They are not all equally reliable and they're not suitable for every person. Some hormonal methods can cause side effects, and some people do not agree with contraception on either religious or moral grounds. Some contraception is easily available and cheap, so people might favour these methods, for example, condoms. And others need medical prescription or fitting, for example, the pill or an IUD. Thank you for listening to my lesson, and I will see you again in the next lesson, which is all about IVF.